So we know that Christmas time can be quite a triggering time for people who struggle with their relationship with food because there's lots of hot chocolates, mince pies, cakes, fruit cakes, lots of food, buffets, and it can be quite a triggering time. So in this video I'm going to be talking about 5 quick tips which I recommend you do, which I implemented that reduced my binge eating episodes, and now I don't struggle with binge eating. An event back then, and then you associate memories, you associate feelings with it. It's kind of like a very difficult feeling to think back about, but it's strange to see how far I've come, and I want to share these 5 tips with you so you can get out of binge eating, get rid of food anxiety, and start to feel safe around this Christmas period. So the first quick tip I highly recommend is when you're coming to a buffet or being served food, ask if you could serve yourself rather than being served portions, because sometimes people just give you a massive portion and you feel quite anxious, and then this is gonna spiral you into like, oh, I don't feel like I'm gonna eat anymore, or I'm not gonna eat anything that I really enjoy, I'm gonna skip meals. So if you can, try to be kind and try to say, can I serve for myself? I'm gonna have this portion, rather than other people giving the portions to you. Sometimes you'd be surprised that sometimes they just say like, okay, yeah, just have whatever you want, because some people actually think that serving the portions for you is the kind thing to do. But if you just let them know that, can I just have the portions myself, can I just choose what I want, it'll make me feel a bit more at ease and much more comfortable. And you could just tell them like, oh, like probably I'm not really feeling massively hungry. It's a great way to portion your portions, so you know that you have a bit of room to eat the next meal and a bit more room for snacks, because with binge eating recovery it's massively important to eat regular meals and snacks: breakfast, mid-morning snack, lunch, mid-afternoon snack, dinner and evening snack, to prevent any urges to binge eat later on, because skipping meals could lead to overeating later down the line. Tip number 2 is to learn how to urge surf. So urge surfing is a really good DBT skill, which is the dialectical behavior therapy skill. Long story short, if you have the urge to binge eat, urge surfing is essentially just have to hold your urges for 30 minutes, because urges, they come and they go like waves. So you ever get that feeling when let's say you're painting or you're gaming and you feel like time flies by, you don't even feel, sometimes you have the urge to use the toilet and then it just disappears because you're so focused on gaming. So urge surfing kind of like works that way, but we're talking about food here and binge eating urges, not the toilet. You need any clarification? So if you have the urge to binge eat, then engage yourself in a non-food activity which keeps you engaged or something you enjoy. So maybe like watching some TV, listening to a podcast, having a shower, going for a walk, painting, anything that gets you out of that mindset of like, oh, worry, binge, food, anything that keeps you quite engaged and quite refocused into something else. I highly recommend, sometimes people find that gaming is actually quite helpful, and gaming, if you really enjoy gaming, then go for it if you're having the urge to binge eat. But I personally don't recommend competitive gaming, because with competitive gaming and ranks, let's say you lose a match which is quite big and then you feel like, oh, I lost my rank, for example, or I'm going down the rank, I'm going down the ladder. It can spiral you into like sadness, guilt, thinking that you're not worthy enough. Then you'll trigger a binge eating episode. So when you implement urge surfing, what you're essentially doing is that you're trying to separate the urge from action. And it might seem really difficult at first. You probably might even binge, but at least you held it up for like 5 or 10 minutes. The more you try to implement urge surfing, then the space between urge and action actually gets wider and wider, and you're able to become more mindful and break off this habit of having binge eating urges. Number 3 is to schedule non-food activities. So during Christmas time, it's easy to focus on food activities. Let's eat here, let's eat this, I can't wait for dessert. But try to schedule with your friends or family or your loved ones or whoever you're celebrating with during this Christmas time or Thanksgiving time, non-food activities. So that could be, for example, like walking, maybe some outdoor games, maybe just a drive around the coast, or maybe like some swimming. Some people here in the UK, especially where I'm living, they go for like walks and cold sea swims, and those are something that could, like, some ideas that can like take away from food, feeling anxious around food, especially after a massive meal. Sometimes it's easy to overthink and overindulge ourselves, shall I say, with the fancy quotation marks, overindulge ourselves into guilt and shame and anxiety around certain foods or certain desserts, apple cakes, tarts, fruit cakes, mince pies. So have a list of non-food activities in your tool belt that you can recommend or schedule them with your friends and family or whoever you're celebrating with. Number 4 is to incorporate mindful eating. So mindful eating essentially is when you're trying to eat a food that you're not essentially like not eating it on autopilot. So if you struggle with binge eating, you could probably relate to what I'm talking about. So when you have a binge eating episode, you eat the food really quickly and you enjoy it for like maybe the first 5 minutes, and then you feel like you're being possessed. You're just eating food, you're not really enjoying it. You're in this mindset of just trying to fill everything as much as possible. You're trying to fill in a hole in your heart. Hopefully not literally, hungry, but like you're trying to fill a hole as much as possible. You're trying to get rid of all the food and put it in your body. Even though you've hit this point of like comfortable fullness, probably like 8 out of 10 fullness, now you're like 12 out of 10 fullness, you start to feel sick. So mindful eating looks like you eat the food and then you can associate it with like nostalgic memories. You can really savor the flavor. You can try to explore the seasonings. What's in this food? What's in this mince pie? Like, does it have a bit more flake in it? Does it have like a bit of butter in it? Can I try to break it down? If I was to describe what this mince pie is in like 5 adjectives, is it delicious? Is it crunchy? Is it quite tart? Is it quite sweet? Is it quite sugary? So those kinds of things. If you're trying to incorporate mindful eating or practice mindful eating, what I highly recommend is try to describe the food in 5 adjectives. That's really helpful, and it's a really good skill to incorporate mindful eating. The more you're trying to be more mindful of your eating, then your urges to binge eat will actually reduce, and you're actually in the moment. And even monks use this skill of trying to be more mindful, which is, if you're mindful, they say that cravings and binge eating essentially happens because you're not eating mindfully, you're eating on autopilot, you're not being psychologically satisfied. But if you eat mindfully, then you're triggering the psychological satisfaction because you're in the moment and you're eating the food, and then your urges to binge eat later on will reduce a little more because you've completed that psychological satisfaction. You're not just eating just for mechanical fullness in your stomach, but you're also eating and you're savoring the moment for psychological satisfaction. You're getting and you're actually savoring that dopamine hit. And finally, tip number 5, which is probably the most important thing, is make sure that during this Christmas season, Thanksgiving season, holiday season, winter season, whatever you call it, is to eat consistently. Because one of the main triggers of binge eating is skipping meals. Because when we struggle with binge eating, I often, if you've been listening to my videos for a while, that we need to see binge eating as not a problem, but a symptom. A symptom that our body's craving food. Like, oh, like there's food. Let's ramp up those hunger hormones because we don't know when food is gonna come in. You're in this binge restrict cycle of binging, restricting, binging, restricting. If I can expand on that, you're essentially binge eating, feel guilty, you jump onto a diet to make up for the calories you've eaten. You're in this never-ending cycle of trying to make up for the calories eaten the previous time. And then that triggers another binge eating episode because you're trying to restrict as much as possible. You're trying to make up for the calories and your body's sensing, oh, there's no food? I'm gonna ramp up the hunger hormones again. Let's train our body to have one gigantic meal. During the evening time, let's ramp up those hunger hormones as much as possible. Ramp up those cravings at a specific time in the evening. There's no need to like ramp up the hunger hormones in breakfast or lunch because nothing's coming in. So that's essentially what we're trying to tell our body. If there's nothing coming in, then our body's gonna train itself to not feel hungry in the morning. Which is why some people might say actually like, oh, I'm not a breakfast person, when in reality their body is wired to have massive hunger spikes during the evening because you're training yourself to not eat much in the morning or the daytime and then have a massive craving rush in the evening. So to break the cycle of like the binge restrict cycle, make sure you eat regular meals. So what you eat after a binge is going to dictate whether you binge or not later down the line. So let's say you had a binge eating episode in the evening. Then the next morning, are you going to continue to eat a little bit of breakfast or maybe a mid-morning snack? Or are you going to restrict, which is going to tell your body, okay, nothing coming in again? Let's ramp up those hunger hormones, those hunger cues later in the evening. If you're eating consistent meals, you're telling your gut, okay, food is coming in regularly, there's no need to ramp up those hunger cues. If you're worried about weight gain, essentially, our body's really smart. It likes to stay at a baseline. So if you're, rather than like having like 3,000 calories in a binge, then we're trying to split those calories throughout the day, or like maybe 2,500, 2,000 calories throughout the day. Breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Because you're not gonna have a binge eating episode in the evening because you're telling your body, essentially there's food regularly coming in. Our eyes can see there's food in the fridge, food in the cupboard, but our guts don't have eyes. They only sense what's coming in and when it is coming in. So we need to give our body some reassurance, our gut some reassurance that food is coming in regularly. There's no need to binge eat because food is coming in regularly. So there are 2 things you need to do to reduce your urges to binge eat. Be full and be satisfied. Like for me, I can eat like boiled chicken and broccoli. I can be mechanically full, but I'm not gonna be satisfied because I don't really enjoy it. But if I have like a nice chicken Alfredo pasta with lots of cream and sauce and seasonings, that's gonna make me full and satisfied. So make sure you try to eat regularly, consistently this Christmas season. And if you struggle with like trying to recognize your hunger cues and all these kinds of things that I've been mentioning about, check the link in the description for my hunger regulation ebook. And you can also check this link over here on how to make or create balanced meals which can reduce your urges to binge eat. So I really hope you enjoyed this episode and hope this has been quite helpful. And let me know if you really enjoy this kind of format with the Christmas tree, a much more closer, intimate discussion. A bit rambly, but it's quite really important to talk about the importance of Christmas because I want you to have a nice, safe Christmas as much as possible, trying to reduce some anxiety as much as possible. So make sure to like, comment and subscribe. How did you find this video? Comment below. What's the main thing that causes you much anxiety around Christmas? I'd be really keen to hear what you have to say, and probably I'll try my best to comment as much as possible. So I'll see you in the next video. See ya!